Hey, Danny Gonzalez here with IndustrialSage. Hey, before we jump into today's episode, I got a question for you. Do you have a solid digital marketing content plan? Or do you have questions around that? Well, listen, we've got a really great, free, awesome tool for you. It's our digital marketing content planner. It's a download that is a very comprehensive plan on how to take all of your digital marketing content, look at your personas, look at your calls to action, look at your strategy, and take everything that you have on your whiteboard or maybe in your head and really crystallize it and put it together in a very actionable format. So if you're interested in this, you can go to industrialsage.com/digital-content-planner, and you get access to this free tool, and we'll even send you a 10-minute free guide on how to walk through and set it up. So I don't want to delay any further. Let's jump into today's episode.
Welcome to Industrial Sage, a free weekly video podcast series all about digital marketing for industrial manufacturers. Hear interviews with your peers and find out how they're solving the same challenges that you might be facing in your own field. Coming to you from the Optimum Production Studio in Atlanta, Georgia, this is Industrial Sage.
All right, so for today's episode of Industrial Sage, we actually have a topic submission, a question that came in from Maggie at Vecna Robotics, and it's all around content marketing, on how to repurpose content. She asked a really great question. So Maggie, thanks so much for doing that. I'm gonna read your question here. I'm gonna send you this little t-shirt. And she wrote in and she says, we presented a seminar at MODEX using PowerPoint, and we received a lot of requests to send the deck to both attendees and those who missed it. But I didn't just want to post the deck because it doesn't contain the narrative that our speaker gave. It doesn't tell a story besides being sequential. I decided to turn the presentation into an ebook and turned to Google to see if there are any articles or best practices for doing so. I found maybe 3 articles. I wonder how many other people just send the deck without realizing the potential to greatly increase the value of it. Without a narrative, you can't control the influence it has on someone. Anyway, to make this long story short, it'd be great if you could write up a guide on how to turn a PowerPoint presentation into a lead-generating ebook. Maggie with Vecna Robotics. Maggie, great question. So this is something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and there's a great opportunity here, and that's to be able to repurpose that content. Look, you spent a lot of time putting together that presentation at speaker deck. You see that at events all the time, whether it is maybe even in a webinar where you've got a captive audience there, or you're, again, in a live event where you're on stage. You have some great content. How can you repurpose that? Well, the first recommendation that I'd have, and this ship has already sailed, so this might not necessarily work in this scenario, but for the next thing, if we can think of it and position it strategically ahead of time and say, hey, you know what, we've got this event going on, and we've got a presentation, how else can we structure it so that we can repurpose this down the road? So, obviously, again, for this time, not going to work, but down the road, be thinking about that. How, we're going to spend a lot of time in this content. But now you've got this content, so here's a couple things that I would recommend that you could do for it. So one would be go through that presentation again, have your, or whoever gave the presentation on there, do that again, but have it recorded. And you can do that in several different ways. One, you could literally, have a video camera on your presenter and then have your slide decks and kind of edit that back and forth. You can do it through a program like Webinar or Zoom where it has that recorded. You might not, be able to see that face. But at least at that point, that you are able to tell that story with those decks. And I understand, depending on what that presentation may be, it may just be like a picture and then a couple words, and you're right, there's not that full story to go there. It's a visual aid. It doesn't tell the whole thing. So that's the first thing that I would recommend to do that and be able to send it out that way. The other thing that you could do is kind of record that whole thing in the video in sort of one take, but then maybe chunk out each individual slide into smaller individual deliverables. What this is going to do is it's going to kind of help to break down that story because, not everybody goes and they're going to want to sit through a 60-minute or 45-minute presentation, however long it was. I'm assuming it was that long, but maybe it was shorter. But at least at that point that you can have additional content that you can really, chunk out and say, okay, here's a little 2-minute bite of the overall piece. And you know what? And if somebody would like to listen to more of it, guess what? They can they can go to that next video or watch the whole thing there. So what it does, it really helps to sort of maximize it. That's why when you give a webinar, for example, having it recorded and having an on-demand recording on your website is really, really valuable. That's content that you can gate. So if, in other words, if people are searching around for the topic that you gave on maybe the solution to a problem, and they're Googling, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a webinar, and they're like, oh my gosh, this speaks exactly to what I'm talking about. This speaks exactly to the challenge that we have, and you've got a gated, boom, now you can capture their information, and that's a lead for you. So it's a really great way of being able to repurpose that content. Again, if you can think of it strategically ahead of time, the better, because when you go to record it, you can make sure you have breaks at each the slides or in different areas where it makes sense in that presentation. So let's see, I have a couple notes on here. The other thing that I would recommend is when you actually send that, they've got a lot of great tools now where you can actually track the delivery of it. So in just saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to send you the PDF, well, you can't really track that. But now there's a lot of great tools. We use a tool inside HubSpot, for example, where you can upload documents. We'll do this with proposals. We'll do this with presentations. We'll do this with any type of, normally that would be a typical PDF content. Upload it there. You send it a link. It's online. Guess what? We know when that piece of content is open. We know how much time a particular person has spent on that on that slide deck, for example. So it'd be kind of cool to know that if you sent something to me, I look at it. I spend a lot of time on slide 3. Slide 3, we talk about sustainability. I'm just making stuff up. It gives you some more value there. And then you also know too if you send it to somebody and then they forward along to everybody in their company, and all of a sudden you see all these opens. Hey, you struck a chord. There's some interesting things here. Maybe we can follow up with that. And then the last thing I would say, and this goes back to some of that tracking, is if you do a video recording, which again I highly recommend, that you can using a video analytics player that you can have more information than just what you would get on a YouTube, for example, that tells you views. So having, again, gated content where people can put their information in, you can tag them, you can see who they are, how much they're watching. It's really going to give you a lot more value. And then you really want to go further downstream. You take that and you integrate that into marketing automation platforms. You integrate that into CRM. That starts getting a little bit more complicated, but there's a lot of value there. And then, I feel kind of bad now actually because I'm going over this and I'm talking about everything, and you actually asked about how to do it in an ebook, and as you can see I'm a little bit I didn't really talk about the ebook as much, and the real, I think the reason there is just because I think that the ability to be able to track a lot of this content is much better in a video type form. It's easy, you can share it a lot easier, you can get analytics and a lot more intelligence on that. I guess one other thing that I would mention as far as an ebook, if you can, this is going to take you some more time to do that, but you may need to kind of rework it and kind of create definitive chapters or add more content to make it an actually fully functional ebook there. One strategy that we've seen a lot of people do is if you kind of feed into your overall content marketing strategy, you'd say, okay, over the course of a year, we're going to have 12, we're going to release a blog article every single month. But instead of saying, hey, well, this month we're going to do an article on this, or in this month we're going to do an article on that, if you can piece it all together and say, hey, each individual article that we're doing is going to lead into an overall ebook. And so you can do it one of two ways. You can write each chunk every single month, and then over the course of a year, you've got all that content that you can compile into an overall ebook, or you can work in the reverse, create a large file, which I think is what you were kind of alluding to with that presentation, and then you chunk that out. So instead of having one piece of content, you've got 13, and each of those other 12 little blog articles really lead into that larger ebook. So anyways, I hope this was helpful. If you have any other questions, reach out. If I didn't answer your question at all, I'm sorry. You can return the shirt. Hey, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, Maggie, and everyone else out there who's listening and watching. Thank you for being part of this community here. Like Maggie, if you have any questions and if you have any particular challenges, please write into us. We'd love to answer it. So you can email us at industrialsage.com/questions. That's not an email address, that's a website, but the email address will be there. You can fill out a form, put your question in there. Hey, and if we like your question, we'll send you a shirt. Thanks for doing that. And as always, please be sure to share our content. If you're listening to it on iTunes, hey, we'd love if you could subscribe and give us a rating or a review. We love it. So without any further ado, I'm done for this week. I'm Danny Gonzalez, and this is Industrial Sage.